The Journal of IT Education Discussion Cases is an open access journal whose mission is to publish discussion case studies related to information technology. And it only publishes discussion cases. It does not publish research cases or regular articles. And the idea behind this journal was to give faculty members access to a free source of high quality discussion cases. As part of this mission, one of the things that the Journal of IT Education tries to do is to help individuals who are not used to writing discussion cases. And towards this end, we developed a template for the cases. And if you want to submit a case to the Journal of IT Education Discussion Cases, you have to use this template. However, this template can also be used for all sorts of other case studies. And so what we will do in this video is just provide a quick overview of the JITE DC template, what it's for, how to use it, and how this template can be helpful in structuring a case study for individuals who have not already developed a lot of case studies. The Journal of IT Education Discussion Cases template is actually not a template, it's a Word document created in, I think, a Word 2003 format just for compatibility purposes. And if you want to use it, the easiest way is to just take this document, rename it, and then just start typing your case over. Now, the document has a number of key areas. It has the first page, which has a very specific format to it. It has the body of the document, and then at the end it has various exhibits as well as some acknowledgments and that sort of thing. And so what we're going to do in this presentation is we're going to go over the different parts of this and how you use it. Before we worry too much about the specific organization of a case, let's just take a look at some of the things that using this document gives you that you wouldn't get if you just used an empty document. First off, it gives you a whole bunch of things like logos and stuff, and it tells you where everything needs to be put. This is important because the Journal of IT Education Discussion Cases has a very specific layout philosophy, which states that the first page should always be an introduction to the case. We have a logo here for cases that are under submission and another logo when the case is actually published. If you're planning to use this template and then submit to somewhere else, that's fine. You could just remove all these things and just use those portions of the format that you want. Similarly, the Journal of IT Education Discussion Cases allows for submissions to be not anonymous, because very often the authors include the decision maker of the case, and so under those circumstances it doesn't really make sense to make it anonymous since the author's already going to be named in the case, so you can fill out those things. When you're writing the case, try to preserve the formatting. So in this particular case, if we were to click on this area, you see it's Arial 16, but don't worry about the specific fonts. Instead, what you want to do is you want to use styles. And if we open this up, what we'll see here, I'll just drag this up, is that this particular element is heading 1 style. And by using styles, you don't have to worry about the formatting. In fact, as we go through the case, one of the things you'll see is if I click on this, which is our top level heading for sections, that style is heading 2. If I click at the next level heading over here and look at the style, that's heading 3, and so forth. So if you just follow these styles and just replace what I've given you with your own type, then you're okay. Now, one of the odd things about this template is it's written as if it were a case study about someone trying to decide whether or not to write a case study. I think that was probably just me being way too clever when I designed the case. But nevertheless, what it does do is it gives you an organization that's going to be fairly similar to the organization that you would have in a typical JITE-DC case. And it's probably a pretty good organization for people start case writing. So with that, when you're using the template, uh, basically follow the structure I've given you. Just rewrite everything that has been provided. Use heading 1, 2, and 3 for the different levels of your sections within the case. When you come to the end of the case, you will see exhibits. If we take a look at the style there, I created a special style called exhibit for that. And so just use that style. And that way, if you submit to the Journal of IT Education discussion cases, things should be pretty well formatted. And I think that's important because before you submit a case like this, you typically want to give it to students to do a run through first. And you want it nicely formatted before you give it to your students. You don't want to give them a 40-page double-spaced document with no formatting and say, now prepare this case. It's better to give them something that looks like a case. Now, just to make things a little bit more convenient as I go into the layout of the document, I created an Acrobat version of it that actually is done in landscape mode. I'll just scroll this down so that you can see it, and then I'll scroll it back up, which just allows me to look at the different elements as single pages. And perhaps the most important thing when you're getting started writing a case using the template is the first page. The first page of a JITE-DC case has a very, very specific format. We've got a submission logo up here that's replaced with a regular logo if the case is approved. There's a logo over here which you can replace with your own school's logo if you choose to. Otherwise, we'll just use the Informing Science Institute. We have a date. We have the names of the authors. The JITE-DC does not require anonymous submission because in a lot of cases, the protagonist will actually be one of the authors of the case, and so you really can't keep everything anonymized. It just gets in the way. So you can submit it with your names if you choose to. The format is written like a case study to make it easier for you just to type over things. The title of the case is here in heading 1 with a footnote that has a copyright notice. And you can change the copyright notice as you need to. However, if it is published by the Informing Science Institute, the Informing Science Institute would take the copyright. Now, the first page of this case always has to have an overview of the decision that needs to be made. So JITE-DC does not accept any variations from that. It has to be one page and only one page. I've got it in the landscape here, but it doesn't have to. You can have a little space at the end, but you don't want to overlap over to the next page. And the idea of this is that it serves as an alternative to an abstract. It's basically if someone's trying to decide whether or not they might want to use a case for a class, by reading the first page, they get enough of the decision and the context so that they can decide if it's a good fit or not. Now, once we move past the first page, the next thing we have is the body of the case, and the body of the case will typically be organized into sections. Now, in my case writing checklist and in informing with the case method, I encourage you to use a structure whereby you start with some general things such as technologies, background information on the industry, background information on the country if it's not going to be obvious to the students, and then you drill down to the specific situation. So in this particular pseudo case, I begin with some general background. In this case, it's background on the case method. Your top level headings are heading 1, and then you go down to heading 2, and possibly down to heading 3 or 4 if you keep having sub-levels. Usually I would say 3 levels are enough for most things. So this is heading 1, 2, and 3. Heading 2 is the 3, and 4 would be typically what you would need. I think this thing down here is a heading 4. Um, so this is the body of the case here. And as I say, the body of the case typically gets more and more detailed down to the business unit and finally down to the decision. Uh, and when you reach the end of the case, of the body, you'll typically have some section like the decision, and that's where we get very, very detailed. Now, case studies often have some source information incorporated in them, and there are two ways you can incorporate the source information. The preferred way is exhibits, and there's actually a style called exhibit that you can use. And the exhibits can be formatted however you want. They might be graphics, they might be text, and you would typically source this type of information within the case. And in most exhibits, I just put source and then some identifying way of where it came from. You do not want to plagiarize, you do not want to violate copyrights, but because this is a little different from a research paper, we're not that formal in terms of sourcing. So sometimes we'll just have source company website or something like that, which just tells you where you got the stuff from. Let's see if I've got any graphics here. Yeah, for example, here at the end I have a graphic that talks about the general structure of a case. And in fact, if you're interested in what goes on the first page, I actually have a commented version of the first page at the very end of the template that was actually created from a screen capture from Acrobat. And so you can't see it all here, but you can get a general sense of the way it's structured. And I actually have a full version of the case with comments just talking about these things. Now, I tend to put as much stuff as possible in the exhibits, but sometimes it's really distracting to have everything in the exhibits. And so from time to time in the body of the case, just so the reader doesn't have to jump back and forth, I will use a table or a figure. And I give instructions as to how the figures should be referenced. Typically the figure goes near the bottom as a caption, whereas for a table it appears on top. And there's some instructions on doing all these basic formatting type things in the template. Now understand, you're going to be rewriting over everything. None of the stuff from the template should survive. The only thing that should survive is the structures and headings and so forth. So that's pretty much all you need to know about using the template. We've had a lot of faculty use it in creating cases for the various grants that we have had to develop case studies. It tends to be a pretty good tool, and there are some good comments in here. For example, I talk about things like choice of tense. In general, you want to have everything written in the past tense. That's probably the most common mistake that I see among case writers, because they're writing cases about something that's happening, so it seems awkward to write it in the past tense. But what you realize is you're not writing for yourself, you're writing for the reader. And if the reader looks at the case 2 or 3 years from now, things are no longer happening. Technologies that were cutting edge now seem like ancient history. So it's better just to write everything in the past tense. When I refer to people, I usually refer to them by the last name, though we have published some cases where the first name is used. But overall, read through the template, type over it when you're actually writing a case. And if you're writing it from some other journal, then all you need to do is get rid of the stuff on top. However, be aware if you're writing for somewhere else, they may have their own formatting instructions. So what you may need to do is you may need to start, if you want to use the template, but then you may have to reformat it to fit the journal. Fortunately, if they have their own template, chances are if you copy the stuff over, things like heading 1 will simply change to the format that they use, because I tried to have as little specific formatting as possible, so it may be very possible just to cut and paste into it and have most of the case relatively faithful to what the journal requires. So that's basically all that I've got to say about the template, and I encourage you to use it, and if you've got any suggested improvements, feel free to let me know.